What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to the SI Sooners podcast. It is episode 2. We're going to hit recruiting today, and I mean hard. I'm John Hoover. I'm publisher at Sports Illustrated Sooners, SI Sooners, allsooners.com. He's Parker Thune. He's the deputy editor, and when it comes to OU recruiting, listen, I got questions. Parker's got answers. It's as simple as that, Parker.
Yeah, John, excited to jump into this second installment of the SI Sooners podcast. Lots to talk about, not just related to recruiting, but as far as recruiting is concerned, plenty of content over the last week or so since we podcasted last that we got to hit.
Yep, absolutely. You got a couple days off last week. I'm glad, because we're going to be grinding till about mid-January from this point on. We're supposed to be at Big 12 Media Days today. Today's supposed to be, it's Tuesday, we're supposed to be at day 2 of Big 12 Media Days, and the Big 12 did a little end around on us, and they pulled the rug out from under us, and they're moving to August 3rd. So we're having to make stuff up as we go. Listen, you can find this podcast basically everywhere you normally find your podcasts: iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, all the usual suspects, all the usual platforms. Or if you're not on a podcasting service, you'll love this. Just go to our website, allsooners.com. It will be embedded right there on a handy-dandy, easy-to-use player on the front page. SI Sooners, allsooners.com is where you're going to find new content on the Sooners every day, like literally every day, 3 to 5 new pieces of content every day, morning, noon, night. Last week, when Parker was gone, he still was submitted copy, and we had 15 pieces of copy posted in 2 days. 15 in 2 days. So jump on there, SI Sooners, allsooners.com. Okay, Parker, maybe someday we'll get on a podcast and we'll screw around and we'll talk about what we got for Christmas when we were kids, and, you know, my mom's lasagna recipe and what I saw a dog eating at the park last week. But today ain't that day. We're going to go straight into the main course on this podcast, meat and potatoes. And let's get 2 birds with 1 stone on this first segment, Parker. Last night, 7:46 p.m., Lincoln Riley posted some googly eyes on Twitter. I have a couple questions for that. Number 1, what's going on here? I thought the googly eyes had been replaced by the big red O. And number 2, who is it, Parker? Who do you think is OU's latest commitment? Because I happen to think there's an outside chance it could be Terrence Brooks. A little bit, maybe I'm a little bit off there. He's a 2022 cornerback, not quarterback, corner. He tweeted yesterday afternoon about 4:35 p.m. that he had received an offer from OU. I think he's from Plano, and maybe OU has been his dream school forever, but he's already got offers from Florida, Texas, Texas A&M, LSU, and now Oklahoma. And then, boom, right after that comes the googly eyes. Parker, what's going on?
Yeah, well, John, I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of people are confused seeing those googly eyes because they've seen the red O emoji from Lincoln Riley a lot in recent weeks, and they're figuring, wait, I thought he was done with the eyes. Well, I think my best guess, John, and I imagine you're on the same page with me, is that the googly eyes refer to the 2022 class, and the red O refers to the 2021 class. So, yes, I would say there's definitely a good shot that it's one of these guys in the Sooners list of 2022 offers that has decided to commit. And you're right. I would say that if I had to pick one, it's probably Terrence Brooks, just based on the timing of when this all came together. Of course, he received the offer yesterday, had a great showing at the Under Armour camp in Durant. And, you watch the guy's tape, he's definitely a Power 5 type player. He's the kind of defensive back that Alex Grinch has placed a pretty significant emphasis on recruiting. He's big in stature for a corner. And, you know, as you begin to look ahead to this 2022 class for Oklahoma, wow, I almost couldn't talk there, John. But this 2022 class, for this 22 class for the Sooners, their only current commit is Kobe McKenzie, the linebacker out of Lubbock. But we're getting to about that time where we're going to see these guys pull the trigger, especially just given the fact that their junior season of high school and their opportunity to really make a statement on the recruiting trail is very much in jeopardy due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
This is the part where I record and insert some new information, a correction, update, whatever you want to call it, after we recorded this, but before I uploaded it, thankfully, we did find out who those googly eyes belong to. It's Jordan Hudson from Garland, Texas. So we were right, it was a representation of the 2022 class, but we were not right. It's not Terrence Brooks, it's Jordan Hudson. So Hudson becomes OU's second verbal commit in the 22 class. He's 6'1", 180 pounds, and he is the number 15 ranked wide receiver in the class, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. He said on Twitter he is 1,000% committed, and this one was for his granny. We now return you to your regularly scheduled podcast. So, Parker, we had thought about recording this podcast on Monday, but we pushed it back because we wanted to get Prophet Brown's commitment in on Monday. He said 1 o'clock Monday, and then all of a sudden he goes and moves it up a day to Sunday, which, when he announced he would not be going to Oklahoma but USC instead. Prophet Brown is a California guy, so I totally get USC here. It's a very attractive school. Why would you not want to go to USC if you're from California for sure? But Parker, how much did Caleb Johnson's decision to commit to OU last week, how much did that influence Prophet Brown? Caleb's a cornerback. He's a really fast one, by the way. I think he's from Greenville, Texas, and I think he has run a sub 4.4. I think he's hit the 100 meters. It was reported anyway. He hit the 100 meters in 10 flat. So kid can flat out fly. But I get the sense that his preference would be to play offense in college, and Prophet Brown was another kid who's listed as an athlete, meaning he was being recruited to play either side of the ball, maybe both, who knows. I don't get the sense here that these two guys are mutually exclusive, Parker, that it was one or the other. That I think had Prophet Brown said, dang, Alex Grinch, I really wanted to come to OU, but now you got Caleb Johnson and I can't. I think Grinch would say, bro, we can fit you in. Don't worry about it. We got nickels, we got safeties, we got strong safety, we got field corners, we got all kinds of corners, we got slot corners. Anywhere you want to play. You want to play offense? Come on down. They're not going to say no to an athlete like Prophet Brown, are they, Parker?
No, John, they're not. And I think you bring up a good point in that Caleb Johnson's commitment on Thursday night fell 72 hours prior to when, or less than 72 hours prior to when Prophet Brown made his decision. And so I think you definitely have to look at that and consider that was likely a factor, especially given the fact that we had reports coming from within our SI All-American network on Thursday, Friday that were indicating that Prophet Brown was leaning towards committing to Oklahoma. Now, Caleb Johnson, as you mentioned, fast guy, 4.39 in the 40, comes from Greenville, Texas, 3-star recruit. He can play both sides of the ball. He's probably a defensive back is what he projects to me in the Sooners system. But Prophet Brown, John, and we talked about this a couple days ago, I firmly believe that Prophet Brown would have ended up playing running back at Oklahoma by virtue of the fact that he just doesn't have the size that Alex Grinch and Roy Manning are looking for in their corners. That's not to say he isn't capable of playing the cornerback position for Oklahoma or for a top-level FBS school like that. All it means is that he just doesn't really fit the system in that sense in terms of his physique. And he's a fantastic running back. Oklahoma currently doesn't have a running back commit in this 2021 class, although Kamore Wheaton has become possibly their heaviest target. So, all things considered, I think it was a combination of a lot of things in terms of Prophet Brown making the decision to go to USC over Oklahoma. One being the proximity to home. Obviously, you want to stay close to home, especially given all that's transpired in the last few months and everything that's going on across the country right now. We don't know what the 2020 football season is going to look like and how that's going to affect 2021 and 2022 and the years to follow. We're very much in unprecedented territory here, and it's a bit of an insurance policy in that sense to stay close to home. However, I also think USC is one of those schools that's probably going to give Prophet Brown the opportunity to do whatever he wants to do at the collegiate level, whether that's play running back or play defensive back. And I think Oklahoma may have offered Prophet Brown the chance to pick, but I think they definitely would have pushed him towards playing running back simply because based on the class of defensive backs that Grinch and Manning have recruited at Oklahoma in their 2 seasons together, Prophet Brown just really doesn't fit. He's kind of a fish out of water when you look at the rest of the commits, guys like Latrell McCutcheon, guys like Jordan Mukes, Bryson Washington, Justin Harrington. Prophet Brown just doesn't have the same physique that I feel like Alex Grinch really wants to see in his defensive backs.
Yeah, and Grinch and Roy Manning have made a very concerted effort to get bigger in the secondary, get bigger at safety for sure, and even the corners are 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2" sometimes that they're going after. If you want to read more about Caleb Johnson, Prophet Brown, Terrence Brooks, and a lot more, you know what to do. SI Sooners, allsooners.com. Up next on the SI Sooners podcast, a little segment we're going to call the Gut Check. Hey, are you a business owner looking to get your product out there to the masses? Let's say you run a hotel in Norman or a car dealership in Oklahoma City or a restaurant in Edmond. Or maybe you're a small online business who creates and sells OU merchandise and you just want Sooner Nation to come sample your wares. Well, then consider advertising in this space right here on the SI Sooners podcast. SI Sooners reaches thousands of readers, viewers, and listeners literally every day. And the SI Sooners podcast is the ideal place to find your next customer. At SI Sooners, we cover all OU sports from football, basketball, and baseball to all the Olympic sports, as well as any big news that comes out of the OU athletic department or from around the Big 12 Conference. To advertise, send an email to allsoonersi@gmail.com or DM us on Twitter at all_Sooners. Let's do some social media on Twitter. It is the easiest way to keep up with me and with Parker and with SI Sooners. Right there, you're going to find at all_Sooners. Mine is at John E. Hoover, and Parker's is at Parker Thune. Parker's also on Instagram. He's proud of that. Check him out at Parker Thune. And I'm on Facebook because I'm old at John E. Hoover Media. And then over on YouTube, you guys, I'm looking right at you. I love you. Get out of here, you knuckleheads. We've got tons of videos, highlights, press conferences, and analysis, all kinds of stuff. But over on YouTube is where you're going to find my rants, my longer rants. And if you're more of a visual person, right, and who among us today is not, we've all pivoted to video somewhat. If you want to sit next to me while I'm podcasting, sit right here on my left-hand side. Come on by my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. I encourage you to become a subscriber because this thing is really growing and really fast. Subscribers have more than tripled in the past year, so you need to jump on board. Lots of good stuff going over there at the YouTube channel, as my subscribers already know. Okay, Parker, let's play a little rapid fire. We're going to call it the Gut Check. I'll ask you the name of a prospect who is currently uncommitted, and you tell me, is he going to Oklahoma or is he going somewhere else? Ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Start at the top. Everything starts in the trenches. Bryce Foster.
Gut says yes.
Gut says yes. Kamore Wheaton, you already mentioned him, running back, top running back in the country.
Gut says yes there too, and I really like the prospect of Wheaton coming in the same class as Caleb Williams and Mario Williams. Those three could form a really, really formidable offensive trio for the Sooners 3 or 4 years down the road.
Emeka Egbuka.
Gut says no, but I'm swaying a little bit on this one because I know how badly Caleb Williams wants him and how much of an emphasis Williams has put on recruiting, most specifically Emeka Egbuka and Jalil Farouk. Those are the two wideouts, the two uncommitted wideouts that Caleb Williams is absolutely hammering with pressure to really evaluate their decision and to think about whether they want to have the opportunity to compete alongside the best of the best at the collegiate level and catch passes from the best collegiate quarterback in this 2021 class. And so I'm not convinced Egbuka is leaning towards Oklahoma right now, but I am absolutely convinced that his mind could change.
Okay, those are three offensive guys. Let's get to three defensive guys. Let's keep it moving. Kelvin Gilliam.
Gut says yes. I've talked to Calvin. He loves OU, especially if Damon Harmon goes there first. I think is a sure thing that he comes to Norman.
Kendall Daniels. This, to me, is a priority for Oklahoma. You can't let a kid this good get out of Beggs, Oklahoma, and go out of state.
Yep, and that's why my gut says yes on that one too, John. I just don't think Lincoln Riley is going to let Kendall Daniels get out of the Sooner State. He's too good of a prospect. He's too much of a priority for the Sooners in terms of, year in and year out, Oklahoma does their best to clear out in-house, in-state recruiting and make sure they land all the top guys in the state. I don't think that's going to be any different this year, and I think Kendall Daniels is the guy among in-state targets in this 2021 class. Quite obviously, as he's the top-rated guy in the state, but I mean he's the guy for Oklahoma among prospects within the state that they're going to be pursuing the most fervently.
All right, Scooby Williams to wrap this thing up.
Gut says yes. Wow, did I really just go 6 for 6 on that, John?
I think you said 5 for 6. Egbuka is
Egbuka, that's right.
Dissension there, yeah.
But Scooby Williams, just based on the Twitter interactions that he's had with Jamar Cain and kind of the vibes that I've been getting from his social media presence, I think there's a really good chance that Jamar Cain is able to snag Scooby Williams from the heart of SEC territory, which would be a statement for the Sooners in a lot of ways.
Okay, so if you have the time, if you're not too busy, let's get to why, and let's talk about who the contenders are that are not Oklahoma. You had 5 of those guys, 5 of the 6 that I mentioned, and there will be others, of course. But you had 5 going to Oklahoma, which would produce, in my estimation, easily a top 5 recruiting class if every one of those guys lands at OU. Let's talk about who the players are for their services. Bryce Foster, I think we know, Texas A&M. Why do you think Oklahoma is the place for Bryce Foster rather than some of those other schools?
Well, John, I just think that's the direction that he's been leading for quite a while, and I think that's evident. You can pick up a lot from social media interactions between a guy and his peers, and I think Bryce Foster, just based on the back-and-forth exchanges that he's had with Caleb Williams and others, it's become pretty clear to me that at this time, Oklahoma is the spot for him, and I'm definitely not saying that's not going to change, but right now it's Oklahoma for Bryce Foster. I believe that wholeheartedly.
Okay. How about Kamore Wheaton? Why do you think he's an OU guy, and where else is he looking at?
Oh, I would say just based on Prophet Brown's commitment and the fact that the Sooners aren't really seriously pursuing any other running back in the 2021 class, they're focusing all their efforts on Kamore Wheaton. It doesn't look like they're going to get Donovan Edwards. They're certainly not going to get L.J. Johnson. So as far as offensive skill position players, Wheaton is the guy for Oklahoma. Him and Emeka Egbuka that are going to be the 2 preeminent focuses of Lincoln Riley's recruiting efforts in the next few weeks. And he's also looking at Texas, looking at SMU, looking at LSU. I feel like it's going to come down to the Sooners and the Longhorns, quite honestly, but I like Oklahoma's chances there.
Do they have a plan B at running back? If Prophet Brown is staying in SC in California and Kamore Wheaton, should he go to Texas or LSU? Do they have a plan B?
Well, in this 2021 class, it doesn't look like it because, I mean, you look at their 5 offers at the running back position, Evan Pryor and Travion Henderson both going to Ohio State. Donovan Edwards, guy from Michigan, he doesn't look like at this point he's seriously considering Oklahoma. And L.J. Johnson looks like he's Texas A&M bound. So if it's not Kamore Wheaton, they're probably not getting a running back in this class.
Interesting. And then Egbuka, what gives you confidence that he's not coming to Oklahoma? Why do you think he's headed elsewhere? And who are the schools he's strongly considering?
Yeah, so Egbuka is Max Prep's top athlete in this class overall, the best player in high school football in the 2021 class. So he's got the big boys after him. His final 4 are Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Washington. I think Ohio State, just based on the offensive dynasty that they're kind of beginning to unlock there, is probably the leader in the clubhouse. I would give Washington a good shot at landing Egbuka just based on proximity. And then, of course, Clemson, who doesn't want to go play for Dabo Swinney? Obviously, Lincoln Riley has as much sway as anybody among offensive skill position players and prospects at wide receiver, running back, tight end, those particular positions. But at this point in time, if Emeka Egbuka comes to Oklahoma, I'm betting that it's going to be based on the influence of Caleb Williams.
Real quick, if we'll finish up the 3, because you expounded a little bit on these 3 defensive guys previously. If they don't end up at Oklahoma, where will Kelvin Gilliam, Kendall Daniels, and Scooby Williams end up?
Kendall Daniels, I would have to say Clemson. He's another guy that, top recruit overall in the state of Oklahoma. So he's got the elite programs after him, and I think he really likes what Clemson has going on there. As far as Kelvin Gilliam is concerned, I'm not convinced that he's fully decided yet on where he's going. I do believe that Damon Harmon's decision is going to impact what he's thinking in terms of his recruitment, but he's a guy that has shown interest in Penn State, in South Carolina. He likes Florida, and he's taken plenty of virtual visits to plenty of schools to try to glean where the best opportunity is going to be for him. So that's what I think on Gilliam and Daniels. As far as Scooby Williams, I mean, the other 5 schools that are after him are SEC schools: Florida, LSU, Alabama, Auburn, and who am I missing here, John? I'm missing one school, and I can't think offhand of who it is. It's Georgia. Georgia. That's it. So you got the 5 preeminent powerhouses in the SEC after Scooby Williams. It's really a toss-up if it's not Oklahoma, because I think Williams really believes in what Jamar Cain is building in Norman, and I think that's the reason why he's leaning OU at this time. But if it's not Oklahoma, I mean, you're essentially flipping a coin between these SEC programs, and given that he's an Alabama kid, I'll bet you it comes down to either Alabama or Auburn, just because very much like Oklahoma within their state, Alabama and Auburn do their best not to let top-level talent get out of Alabama. And so I would say it's probably those 2 schools if it's not Oklahoma for Scooby Williams.
And we can't very well talk about recruiting on this podcast without talking about the man himself, Sports Illustrated's #1 quarterback in the 2021 class, SI's #1 overall player in the 2021 recruiting class. Parker, it's Caleb Williams.
That's right. And, it really wasn't a surprise, John. And I talked about this this morning with Toby Rowland on 1400 Sports Talk. But when we were out there at the Elite 11 with the SI All-American staff scouting Caleb Williams, who eventually won MVP honors at the event, that was where we were first starting to kick the idea around. And I was talking to John Garcia about where Caleb Williams was going to rank on the SI Top 1,000. And it became pretty evident after his performance at the Elite 11 that it was going to be him at the #1 overall slot. And it's evidence that he stands head and shoulders above the rest of the field, not just at the quarterback position, but in terms of his potential at the collegiate level among all players. And I think he's drawn a lot of comparison to Patrick Mahomes, and I think there's very much that chance that much like Mahomes has done at the NFL level in really revolutionizing the way that the quarterback position is played, Caleb Williams has that same potential, and that starts in Norman at the University of Oklahoma. Now, we've talked ad nauseum about his athleticism, his arm strength, just the natural gifting that he has to play the quarterback position. And I really agree with what the rest of our SI All-American staff decided in putting Caleb Williams at the pinnacle, on the pedestal of the SI Top 1,000, because flat out, John, there just isn't another prospect in this class that has the long-term potential, the college football and NFL Hall of Fame potential that Caleb Williams has.
And he's going to look into the possibility of enrolling early at OU. Explain that.
Yeah, that's become an interesting point of discussion over the last week and a half, because there was very much a sense that, going into the 2020 season, obviously at the high school level, especially in Washington, D.C. at that particular time, that school was going to shift online and there may not be a high school football season. So I think that was really when the idea was planted in Caleb Williams' mind that, this might be an opportunity for him to get ahead, for him to get to Oklahoma a little bit early, start to learn the system, start to compete against collegiate players, start to learn from Lincoln Riley and absorb whatever information and tips from the quarterback whisperer that he could glean to be able to put himself in a better position to take the reins at Oklahoma. And so he's taken online classes this summer. He's said that he's trying to accelerate his graduation and be able to get out of Gonzaga College High by December, or rather geographically out of Gonzaga College High by December. And essentially what he's banking on, John, is the fact that come the spring semester, his senior year of high school will be all online, because Gonzaga doesn't allow students to graduate early. But if he's able to take classes online, and he's able to come to Norman and essentially dual enroll and spend time on the campus at OU while finishing up high school, then obviously that puts him in that much better of a position to be able to dominate the second he hits the field for the Sooners.
Interesting dilemma. Up next on the Sooners podcast, are we actually going to play football in 2020?
Hey there, loyal listeners. Parker Thune here with SI Sooners. Are you a business owner looking to get your product out there to the masses? Let's say you run a hotel in Norman, or a car dealership in Oklahoma City, or a restaurant in Edmond. Or maybe you're just a small online business who creates and sells OU merchandise, and you want Sooner Nation to come sample your wares. Consider advertising in this space right here on the SI Sooners podcast. SI Sooners reaches thousands of readers, viewers, and listeners literally every day, and the SI Sooners podcast is the ideal place to find your next customer. To advertise, send an email to allsoonerssi@gmail.com or send us a direct message on Twitter at @all_Sooners.
The SI Sooners podcast rolls on. Okay, Parker, let's stop talking about the future and Nostradamus and making predictions and sci-fi and whatever else. Let's get back to reality here. Are we even going to have a college football season? Listen, as of now, I think we've seen, and this is, again, Tuesday morning, 4 FCS conferences have said no football in the fall. They're straight up moving to the spring. I think the Ivy League, the Colonial Athletic League, the SWAC, and then one other, I can't remember which one, they basically said, screw it, we're just moving to the spring, no football in the fall. You've got the National Junior College Athletic Association moving to the spring. Although there's a conference in Mississippi that has said, no, we're going to play in the fall. So that could get interesting. And you know what? We're talking about recruiting earlier and California kids. The state of freaking California has said it will not play high school football in the fall, but will move to a spring schedule. And of course, last week, the Big Ten Conference and the Pac-12 announced they're not going to play non-conference games this year. They're only going to play conference games. Of course, all of this is subject to change. Besides the obvious, Parker, of screwing up everybody's schedules and fall plans, in the Big 12 alone, I think you have 4 teams that are scrambling to find games because the Big 12 is still holding out hope that they can not only play a 12-game schedule, but to play in the traditional calendar months of September, October, November. TCU loses its game with Cal. Oklahoma State loses its game with Oregon State. And then yesterday with the FCS cancellations and the SWAC, you saw Texas Tech and TCU each lose an FCS opponent. So this is getting kind of hairy. And let's not forget, Oklahoma opens the season with an FCS opponent, Missouri State. But I get the sense from that one that Missouri State wants that game and the $600,000 just as bad as OU does.
Well, I would imagine so, just given everything that's transpired over the last few months and the financial hardship that it's created for a lot of these institutions, especially those at the FCS level. I would imagine Missouri State is in a lot more eager of a position to want to play this game with Oklahoma than they were a few months ago when their athletic director said that they weren't budgeting to play the game. And of course, Joe Castiglione has said he's trying to move the game up. They're trying to move it up to August 29th to allow for some time in between that Missouri State game and the Tennessee game to be able to kind of get their bearings, reevaluate, see how it goes, and then if they need to adjust or make any changes, then do that. But yeah, John, it's really it's created so many questions, especially, when the Big Ten decided to kind of go their own way and cancel non-conference play. That put the pressure on everybody else immediately because the reality is, John, we're 6 weeks away from football. We're getting down to crunch time. And what it comes down to is a lot of these schools right now only have 9 games on their schedule across the country. For now, Oklahoma and some of these other Big 12 schools have a full 12-game schedule. It's a weird, weird place that we're in. And obviously the decision by the Big Ten Conference and other conferences have impacted schools within the Big 12 and within those other conferences that haven't yet decided to go ahead with cancellation plans. But, man, John, as I look across the country at these teams that are going to be in position to, you would imagine, contend for a college football playoff berth come December and January, it creates so many questions in terms of, okay, what's that selection process going to look like? given the fact that there might be a 3-game discrepancy between schedules. Obviously, the state of California ruled yesterday, as you mentioned, that they're not going to play high school football in the fall. And honestly, John, at this point, if it comes down to moving college football to the spring as a last resort, as opposed to canceling the 2021 season, and if you read the decision from the California Interscholastic Federation yesterday and their Southern Section Commissioner, Rob Wygott, he said basically what this was in terms of attempting to move the high school football season to the spring. He said it was a last-ditch effort to save the football season because the alternative was announcing the cancellation of the entire season yesterday. So, if it comes down to it, and the best course of action, or rather the only course of action for the NCAA, is to move their football season to the spring, you're going to have to start moving in that direction here within the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and I think the Big 12 has been smart, as well as Oklahoma. We've talked to Joe Castiglione a handful of times, and Bob Bowlesby a couple times. I think everybody has been smart and prudent to say, we're going to wait. We're going to hold off. We're going to have our plan A, and we're going to stick to it as long as possible. But in the back, they're developing, back in the back smoky room where nobody hardly goes, and there's a restroom off to the side, and they stack up the cases of beer. That back in those dark storerooms is where they're working on their plan B and their plan C and their plan D and their plan E, and among those plans is playing in the spring. Listen to this. I'm going to throw a name at you. Corey Foreman, the nation's #1 recruit. He came out yesterday on Twitter and said, if they make me choose between my senior season or going to college, please believe I'm headed to my first camp, no questions asked. That's the #1 overall guy in the country, according to Rivals, defensive end from, ironically, Corona, California, and he makes that call. You can bet that there's going to be a lot of other recruits who are saying, he did that, I'm going to do that too. I'm going to have what he's having. They're going to follow his lead.
Yeah, certainly. And, when a guy like Corey Foreman, a guy who is largely rated the top defensive prospect in this 2021 class, the most influential, of course, he was committed to Clemson, decommitted, and hasn't announced where he's going come his freshman year in 2021. But, this guy is the best defensive player in this class, John, and I don't think that's a question in anybody's mind. But when a guy of that significance and a guy who has that much stature in the national spotlight in terms of high school football recruiting, when he comes out and says something like that, it carries a lot of weight. Believe that. And people are going to look at what Corey Foreman said yesterday, and they're going to look at the precedent that sets for other top collegiate prospects within the state of California and any other states that decide to move their high school football season. And they're going to say, okay, if this is what it comes down to, then we may have to make some tough decisions. And somebody's going to end up on the outside looking, and somebody's going to end up upset with whatever we end up doing, and that's just going to be the way that it has to be, because, as we've said so many times before, John, this is unprecedented, uncharted territory. And, if Corey Foreman wants to forego his senior season of high school, you look at it a certain way, that's almost like a collegiate player foregoing a bowl game in order to preserve their NFL draft stock and avoid injury, something like that. But, when the calendar flips from December to January and you start to look ahead to the next football season, that definitely takes priority in a lot of people's minds, and obviously that's the case with Corey Foreman. I would imagine it's going to be the case with a lot of these guys who are already who know their destination at the collegiate level. Now, where it really hurts is it hurts these 2022 guys and a lot of these guys that are fringe recruits and trying to earn the attention of top collegiate programs, FBS programs, and try to find a home for themselves at the FBS level, and now they lose out on a season. Hypothetically speaking, they lose out on an opportunity to try and make that happen.
Yeah, and you could be also talking about the possibility of some seniors coming back, some college seniors coming back in for their senior year in 2022, or I should say 2021. They're seniors this year. That might affect where a kid decides to go based on who's ahead of him on the depth chart. You never know. I mean, it's a Pandora's box, and every time it opens, something weird and evil flies out. I don't know. All right, couple quick news items. Jalen Hurts signed his rookie contract. I think it was with the Eagles with 4 years, $6 million, roughly. Not bad, Parker.
Yeah, certainly. And you look at the situation that Hurts is in Philadelphia, it's certainly not out of the question, given Carson Wentz's injury history, that Jalen Hurts sees some action at the quarterback position in this 2020 season. But on the large scale, I would imagine that Philly is going to turn him into a Taysom Hill-like player. And, that's kind of an unfair comparison because Taysom Hill is a one-of-a-kind guy, and there's really no finding the next Taysom Hill just by virtue of everything that he can do on a football field and line up anywhere and make an impact. But Jalen Hurts is certainly going to get used in this Eagles offense immediately, just because of the versatility that he has, the athleticism that he has, and the ability to throw the ball downfield. You can use him in gadget packages, and I really don't think the Eagles look at Jalen Hurts as their quarterback of the future. I think that's quite obviously Carson Wentz, and they don't have any plans to move on from him anytime soon. But I think what the Saints have done with Taysom Hill has opened a lot of head coaches and offensive coordinators' minds to the prospect of what can be done with an athletic guy who can throw the ball in an offensive system. And so Jalen Hurts is very much going to be an experimental type of player. Taysom Hill was kind of the first one through the wall. I mean, if you really want to go back a ways, Cordell Stewart kind of technically was the first one through the wall. But this is really kind of the new wave. I think you're going to see a lot more NFL teams try and pick up a guy like a Jalen Hurts or like a Taysom Hill to open up the possibilities within their offensive system. So I'm excited to see what the Eagles do with Jalen.
Yeah, and Doug Peterson's a creative, innovative guy with the quarterback position anyway. So, they borrowed from Lincoln Riley for the Philly special to win the Super Bowl. He's not a guy that's afraid to think outside the box. So I, too, am eager to see what Jalen Hurts becomes in Philly. A couple more headlines. It is preseason award watch list, and the Sooners have been well represented so far. You can believe it. Yesterday, Deshaun White was on the Butkus Award watch list, linebackers. You've had Austin Stogner on the Mackey watch list for tight ends. You've had Ronnie Perkins on the Bednarik Award watch list. That's for defensive overall greatness. I'm a little skeptical of that one since Ronnie's probably going to be suspended to start the season. You've had Kennedy Brooks on the Doak Walker watch list. Charleston Rambo, wide receiver, Biletnikoff watch list. And then Caleb Kelly made the watch list for the Ronnie Lott Trophy, which is a little bit of citizenship involved in there as well. So he's a good contender for that, if you ask me. And then all Big 12 came out this week, end of last week. OU was a heavy favorite, obviously, to win its sixth Big 12 championship. The all Big 12 team included Creed Humphrey, Charleston Rambo, Ronnie Perkins, Adrian Ely, Gabe Burkich, the kicker, made first team for a little bit of a change. And in case you missed it, Spencer Rattler is the preseason newcomer of the year, even though he hasn't been named the starter yet. You can find stories on every one of those headlines and a lot more at SISoonersAllSooners.com. And listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, or wherever. Or find it on our website, SISoonersAllSooners.com, or subscribe and watch it on YouTube, John Hoover Media. For Parker Thune, I'm John Hoover. See you next time.